Well, good morning. It's great to be here this morning at Ocala First Assembly. My wife and I have just returned back from Peru. We've actually been back for just over 1 month. This is actually our first itineration service. My wife is not with me this morning. My daughter woke up not feeling very well this morning. They're back at the hotel. But we've been serving in Peru for 25 years. And I know what y'all are thinking. He doesn't look old enough. But we are. We just look a lot younger than what we actually are. But we're very glad to be here. We've been doing youth and children's ministries in the country of Peru for 25 years, doing something similar to Master's Commission, raising up young people with a call to ministry, doing Latin American Advanced School of Theology, training young people in Bible school. Let me tell you about our kids. Our son Paul just graduated, during the pandemic 2020 from Southeastern University. He is now living in Miami, applying to medical school. Please be in prayer for him as these applications go out, that God will open up the right door for him. Our daughter Angela just finished her first year at Southwestern Assemblies of God University in Waxahachie, Texas. And leaving here today, we're going to head back there and drop her off. Pray for mom and dad. Those of you that have gone through this before, you fully understand. And please pray for your pastor who's dropping off his daughter in Chicago. Chicago is not a fun place to be in wintertime either. But we're so glad to be here. God's doing incredible things all across the country of Peru. And I want to share with you a little bit about that this morning. But the first thing I want to share with you is I want to let you know that the Lord is coming soon. I believe we are living in the final days, and the Lord is coming soon, and we need to hear what the Spirit is saying to us today. So to kind of start that off, I have brought with me some sounds from Lima. So the question that I have for you is I'm going to make some sounds, and you guys have to try and decide which sound it is. So this is a little quiz this morning. So here's sound number one. When you hear that sound in Lima, what do you think it is? Is it a bicycle race, the bread salesman, or some political rally? It is the bread salesman. You'll hear that sound starting about 5 o'clock every morning. I'm not a morning person. Sound number two. The question is, what sound is that? Ice cream cart, night guard, sound of a car alarm. That, my friends, is the sound of the ice cream cart. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. When you hear that sound, you go running because that's the ice cream guy coming by. Then we have another sound that you will hear from time to time. It is this little guy right here. See, I'm not very good at playing these things, but we'll give it a shot. So the question is, what is that sound? Is that the night guard, the knife sharpener, or the churro salesman? Those of you said knife sharpener, you are correct. That's the guy who comes by with his little wheel and sharpens your knives so that you can cut through the meat that you're going to be serving that night. Now, the last one is a sound that I'm sure you all are very familiar with because we use it here in the States as well. I hate to tell you this, but in Peru, that doesn't mean dinner's ready. In Peru, that means the trash truck is coming by. Bring out your trash. So you hear these sounds, but a lot of times, if you're not clued in, you don't know what they mean. And I want to talk to you today about hearing what the Spirit is saying to the church today. And it's not just about hearing, it's about understanding what He is saying to us today. In Revelation chapters 2 and 3, we find the Spirit actually speaking to the church in the words of Jesus. And when you look at those chapters, and I'm not going to go through it very completely, but you find a number of very important messages to the church of today. And the first one is follow your first love. Love the way you did at the beginning. Love God and love others. The next church he talks about their times of suffering and trials. And the message there is to stand strong during those times of trials and times of suffering. Anybody ever gone through times of trials? Are you right now going through time of trial? Stand strong. The third church he says to live above reproach, to live a life of holiness, to make sure that your character follows the character of Christ. The fourth church, he talks about improving, to not follow the idols and not to make idols in our lives, and to keep yourself pure. That's a pretty good message we're hearing right now. I think I'm preaching better than what you guys are letting on. The fifth church, he says, wake up. You think you're alive, but you are actually dead. Be alive. The message there is to allow the presence of the Holy Spirit flood your life and to be involved in everything that you are involved in as a church. The next to last church, the Church of Philadelphia, he says, I have placed before you an open door which no man can close. The message there is to reach the lost. Do what you can. There's an open door. Allow yourself to step through that open door. The last church, the Church of Laodicea, probably one of the most famous ones, he says, don't be lukewarm. Be hot or be cold. Now, let me explain to you a little bit about hot and cold. The Church of Laodicea had two things very close to it. It had a natural spring of water, cool water that fed the city. But not too far away, they also had hot springs where people would leave the city and go to hot springs. So either be hot or be cold. I liken it to this. Anybody ever been up north in the wintertime when it's like 20 below zero? What are you looking for? A hot cup of coffee, a hot cup of tea, something to warm you up. Well, let me ask you another question. Anybody ever been in Florida in the dog days of summer when it's like 100,000 degrees? What are you looking for? I know what I'm looking for. A big old glass of Southern iced tea that refreshes you. Don't be lukewarm. Be hot or be cold. But then we keep finding the same message over and over again. To the one who is victorious. And that word victorious, when you look at it in the original language, means to subdue, to conquer, to overcome, to prevail, or to win the victory. You see, the message here is that the Spirit is here to help us fight our battles. He has helped us, and we sang about it this morning. He is victorious. He is the champion. And the Spirit is here to help us be victorious in our daily lives. He is helping us as a church to be victorious. We must hear what the Spirit is saying. We must listen to what He is saying, understand, and do what He is telling us to do. And in these last days, I believe there are three very important messages that the Spirit is saying to the church. The first one is, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Acts chapter 2, in the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my Spirit in the last days, and they will prophesy. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. I believe we are living in those days where God is wanting to pour out His Spirit, and the Spirit is wanting to be poured out, not just on a certain group of people, but on all people, and especially upon the young people. God is wanting to raise up a generation of young people who will reach this world for Jesus Christ. I've heard a lot and I've read a lot. I'm a youth pastor. I just moved my office to Lima, Peru. But I've read about everything there is to be read about millennials and this generation. And there's been a lot of really, really nasty things written about them, how they're lazy and they don't follow directions. Well, let me tell you something. Don't believe it. Young people, I'm going to tell you this right now. Do not believe what they are saying about you. Because there is a verse in the Bible that was written out for you. And it says, in the last days, I will pour out my Spirit on all people, your sons and your daughters. You young people are the ones, and then you go on down, and everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Who is going to reach the world for Jesus Christ? It's not going to be us old guys. It is going to be a generation of young people. And this generation wants to see change. They want to bring about a change in our world. And God is going to do it through them. And go on to the next verse. God says he will give us power to be witnesses. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And you will be my witnesses. Where? In Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Now that is not one after the other. That is all at the same time. And you see, as a church, that is what we are to do. We are to be witnesses in our Jerusalem, in our Judea, in our Samaria, and to the very ends of the earth, all at the same time. Well, how do you do that? You can't be all places at one time, but you can send people in your place. You need to be a witness where you are, right here in Ocala, Florida, but you need to also be a witness in places like Peru and India and China. And how do you do that? By sending missionaries. And they go in your place. We've already heard it. Our youth pastor mentioned it this morning, that God has given us authority. And Jesus said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Then he turns around and he says, therefore, go and make disciples. You see, you have to remember that back in Luke chapter 9, Luke chapter 10, he gave his authority to disciples. So he's just reminding them, this is the authority that I have in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the earth. You see, he says to go and make disciples. That is what we are to do. We are to make disciples, not converts. It's more than just getting someone to say a sinner's prayer. It is making disciples. And here we find what I call the 4 R's of discipleship. The first one is relationship. Getting them baptized, getting them in the church, get them in relationship with God and relationship with other believers. The next one is revelation, teaching them about God so they can understand God, understand his laws, understand what he requires of us. The third one is one of the most important ones, is the word response. They must obey. They must do and put into practice. And as we look through the churches of Revelation chapter 2 and 3, we see this over again. Those who hear, those who obey, I will help them, and they will become overcomers. The fourth one is I will be with you always. And the word there is reproduction. You see, we're not to just make disciples ourselves. We're to make disciples that go and make other disciples. The Apostle Paul said it to Timothy this way, the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, trust that into other men who will then go and make other disciples. You see, it was Paul, Timothy, other reliable men, go and make other disciples. It is a process. It is reproduction. And you see, missions is about reaching the lost, making disciples. Dr. Mark Hausfeld, who recently was the president of our Assemblies of God Theological Seminary, said it this way, missions isn't so much about the where. It is about the who, and I would add to that, the what. Missions isn't about so much about where you're going. It's about who and what are you doing. With whom are you working? What are you doing? Are you reaching the lost? Are you making disciples? I don't care whether you're working in Timbuktu, in India, in Peru, or in Ocala, Florida. Who are you working with? What are you doing? Are you reaching the lost? Are you making disciples? You see, God has called us to go and share. One of the things that we've been doing over the last several years, almost 20 years, are something called soccer salvation camps. This is one we did in Ayacucho. Now, let me back up a minute and just remind you about Ayacucho. Ayacucho was the city where the Shining Path, the terrorist group, began. In and around the city, we had 200 Assemblies of God pastors who were killed by the Shining Path back in the 80s. God's doing a new work in that city. We have a Latin American child care school there now. Matter of fact, this church sent 2 teams to work on that school. That's one of the top schools we have now in Peru. A couple of years ago, that school was ranked as the #1 mathematics school in the entire country. A country twice as big as the state of Texas with a population of 33 million. Half of those are under the age of 25. We did a soccer salvation camp in that city. What is a soccer salvation camp? Well, we work with the local church. We hold a 3-day day camp playing soccer. The young people come because of the soccer. We reach out to unsaved people in the neighborhood. The kids come because of the soccer. We start every day with devotions. We break them up into small teams. They play lots of soccer over those 3 days. But then about 11 o'clock every day, we stop everything. They have team devotions. Then we end the day with devotions. We give them their lunch. Every day they get a gift from us. They get a T-shirt the first day. They get a brand new Bible that most kids have never even had a Bible before. And then the last day we give them a brand new soccer ball. In the city of Ayacucho, we had about 150 young people come. Every single one of those kids gave their life to Christ. And then we get them involved. This is another one we did in Sechura. Had about 130 young people there. Every single one of those kids gave their lives to Christ. Matter of fact, over the last 28 years that we've been doing these, 98% of the kids who have come to those camps have given their life to Christ. And then we give the church a discipleship plan. And what do those young people do? In the small teams that they've already been set up in, they begin discipleship. And God begins to use these young people. Matter of fact, I was at another event not too long ago, and a young man walked up to me and said, "Pastor Rich, do you remember me?" I went, no. Should I? He said, "My name is Jonah Quispe. I went to one of your soccer salvation camps a number of years ago. I looked it up. It was 2009. He said, when I went to that camp, I didn't know Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. My family wasn't saved. Nobody. He said, but at that camp, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. I went through the discipleship plan. And Pastor Rich, I want you to know that as I went through the discipleship plan, I was able to win every single one of my family members to Christ. They're all in the church. And we were doing an evangelistic outreach, and he said, Pastor Rich, I came here because I wanted to tell other young people that their lives and their families can be changed like my life was changed and my family was changed. My dad used to be an alcoholic, he said. He doesn't drink anymore. My life has been changed. So then after doing that for a number of years, quite a few years, finally the ladies in our ministry said, Pastor Rich, when are you going to start doing something for girls? I said, what do you want to do? Can't we do something with volleyball? Because volleyball is the #1 sport for girls in most of Latin America. I don't know if you heard recently, there's something called the Olympics that was on. There was a team that won gold. I think it was the United States. Do you know who came in second? Brazil. Why? Because volleyball is the #1 sport among ladies in South America. So we began doing volleyballs with value camps run by my wife, her team of ladies. It's a ministry from ladies for young girls. And we follow the same pattern. Devotions, playing lots of volleyball, team devotions, but at night is where everything changes. You see, during the soccer salvation camp, we do open services for anybody who wants to come. But with the girls, they have very specific services that they hold only for the girls, only run by the ladies of our ministry. The men are not even allowed to attend. And they talk about image, who you are, what God wants to do with your life. And I'm here to tell you that every single girl, 100% of the girls who have come to those camps have given their life to Christ. Out of that volleyball with values camp in Catacaos, we were able to plant a brand new church. The pastor of that area said, hey, we want to plant a church in this area, but we don't know how to do it. I said, well, why don't we start with a volleyball with value camp? We'll have some girls, and we ended up with 130 girls, every single one of them. And right now there's a thriving church where that camp was held. Reaching the lost, getting them involved in discipleship, and like I already mentioned, we have discipleship materials. We give it to them free of charge. What? Yes, free of charge. We say, take this and use it in your church. Reach them and train them and disciple them. Wanda and I have also been doing a lot of teaching with Latin American Advanced School of Theology. That one picture of my wife she's wearing glasses that kind of distort because she teaches a class on ethics. Ethics where they distort the truth, that kind of stuff. God has been doing incredible things. And this is a new opportunity that the Lord has opened up to us. You remember what the Lord said to Jabez? Well, we believe that he has enlarged our territory. For the last 25 years, we have been serving in the country of Peru, serving faithfully there. Well, now the Lord is opening up our territory. And even during this pandemic, starting in basically April of 2020 up until now, Latin American Advanced School of Theology has been online, doing classes by Zoom, training pastors, church leaders. We've had like national directors of the Assemblies of God from other countries. We had the national secretary from Argentina sitting in one of my classes on the Holy Spirit. And through Zoom, we have been able to teach students from all over Latin America, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Panama, Peru, Venezuela, even though they had wonky electricity and wonky internets. Argentina, all the way out to Spain, Madagascar, and Latin American missionaries working all the way in India were part of our classes. Just last year alone, my wife and I sat and trained over 300 national pastors and national leaders, sitting in our home office, turning our home office into a classroom. And now the Lord has opened up the opportunity. Starting in January, we will begin to serve as the academic dean for Latin American Advanced School of Theology, raising up pastors, training pastors and leaders all over Latin America. But when we look at Latin America, sometimes people say, but it's a rich continent, isn't it? I would say no. Latin America has a theme right now in the Assemblies of God. We call it the other five. Why do we call it the other five? Because only 1 out of every 6 people in Latin America have ever truly heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. 1 out of 6. What are we doing? We're reaching the other 5. My wife and I have looked, especially my wife, who are the large groups of people that we find in these other 5. We have things like unreached peoples groups. Just in the country of Peru alone, there are 82 unreached peoples groups. The tribes in the Amazon jungle basin, which now encompasses Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of unreached peoples groups. In our major cities, we have unreached people groups. We have, in the city of Lima, Russian unreached peoples group, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and I would throw in there teenagers. When you have 440 gangs roaming the streets of one city, that's a city of 11 million people, but most of those are made up of teenagers. Unreached peoples groups. Men, you go into our churches, maybe 10 to 15% of our churches have men in them. Most men on Sundays are out drinking with their buddies, out playing soccer, whatever. They are unreached. And most of them have become resistant to the gospel of Jesus Christ. They are not interested at all. They have no hope. Children. In most of Latin America, 50% of the population of our countries are under the age of 15. Most of our churches have no children's ministry at all. Most districts across Latin America have no district children's director. They have nothing set up for children. 50% of a continent. And it's like they don't care. University students. Up until just a few years ago, there was very little to no university ministry on any secular universities. You would hear about one or two people working here or there, but there was nothing coordinated. And these university students is where revolutions take place. Well, we believe that God is going to bring up a new revolution, and it is going to be a revolution of young people, university students who are getting reached by the gospel of Jesus Christ, who are going to go out and who are going to make a difference in the world, and they're going to live for Christ, and they will become presidents, and they will become lawyers, and it will change our nations. But it's only going to happen if we can reach the university students. People with disabilities, especially the hearing impaired, completely unreached with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We live in a country of 33 million. There are over 50,000 hearing impaired in the country of Peru. Do you know how many churches have a ministry to the hearing impaired in the entire country? 2. And they're not even assemblies of God. The other 5. And who are reaching these people? Who are reaching the unreached peoples groups? Who are reaching the men, the children, the university students, these people with disabilities? Well, let me tell you, we have been working for a long time raising up disciples through our Master's Commission program. We now have over 50 young people who have gone through and now have credentials with the Assemblies of God. Disciples that we have raised up. These are 2 young ladies, Maria Elena and Paola. They are both university graduates. Not only that, they are both lawyers. They work for me. When anybody asks me a question, I say, you can talk to my lawyer. But God is raising them up. Marilena and Paola serve as district, youth, and children's directors. One in the northern part of Peru, one for the entire city of Lima. God is using them and reaching them. Matter of fact, the one lady there on the left, Marilena, has a call to be a missionary to India, and I'll talk more about her later. But please pray for her today. Tomorrow, she has an interview at the U.S. Embassy for a visa, a student visa, because God has opened up the door for her next step of ministry preparation. I'm asking you to pray that God will allow her to get the visa. Tomorrow, it's a do-or-die situation for her. God has provided, opened every door possible. She has gotten the finances she needs. All she needs is that stamp in her passport. Please pray for her. Reaching youth, reaching children. Joseph Santiago, and I mentioned the city of Ayacucho. Joseph is the children's director for the entire state district of Ayacucho, raising up children's ministries in churches all across that district, going from church to church, helping to reach children, training workers, holding kids camps. Joseph is a young man that if you looked at him, you wouldn't have given him a dime. From a poor family, no one believed in him. Came to our Master's Commission program. God spoke to his heart. God led him into children's ministry. During the pandemic, you know what Joseph did? He finished his Bible school degree, did his thesis with much encouragement from yours truly. And after he finished, he wrote back and said, Pastor Rich, thank you for believing in me. Nobody in my family, nobody in my church, nobody has ever believed in me. And I'm here to encourage those of you that have the white hair. Pick out a young person. Believe in them. Encourage them. Support them. Become a spiritual mom or a spiritual dad for them. Or find some kid in your neighborhood. Take them under your wing. Disciple them. Train them. You see, not every single teenager up here is going to be a pastor, missionary, evangelist. You see, that's what I do. I train people to be pastors, missionary, evangelists. But I have no idea how to train someone to be a Christian IT guy. Matter of fact, those guys up there, what they do, I am completely clueless. Pastor Steve and I were up here on the platform talking today, and he was explaining how this all works, and we started walking down. I said, I'm glad it works. I have no idea what you just said. How about a Christian mechanic? I open up the hood of the car, and I'm like, yeah, there's an engine in there. I see some things going around. I know where to put the oil in. I could never train anybody to be a Christian mechanic. And Lord, don't we know we need Christian mechanics? Amen. But you see, God is raising up young people, just like Joseph, who are going to go and make a difference. John Wilson, one of the young men who came through our ministry, God has called him to the country of Mexico, but not just to Mexico. He has been called to the hearing impaired of Mexico. And what did John do during the pandemic? He didn't sit at home carrying in fear. He went out to the jungle, shared his message of Jesus Christ with young people, learned how to do sign language. He kept busy. Johan and Claudio Rodriguez. Claudio was one of our students who came from the Dominican Republic to help serve with us in Peru. While her time in Peru, God called her to come back and minister to the unreached peoples groups of Peru out in the Amazon jungle. Went back, met Johan. He had the same call in his life. They got married, and now they are currently serving as missionaries to the unreached peoples group of Peru, the Chahuita and the Shawi, who up until just a couple years ago had not one church. I didn't say Assemblies of God Church, not one church among any of their communities up and down the rivers. They've learned the language, the Shawi language, and they're going out and they're preaching the gospel, and they're reaching the lost, and they are making disciples. Santiago Soto, a young man who came through our program. Again, nobody would have given anything for Santiago, but we believed in him. We poured our lives into him. Santiago was pastoring a small church out in the jungle city of San Francisco. He heard about a group of people called the Machigenga. So he decided to go out and visit this Machigenga group, went out there and started witnessing to them. And they said to him, don't waste your time. We've had other people come here before. We're not interested in your message. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, you will leave and you will never come back, because that's what everybody else has done who's tried this. Well, they didn't know my Santiago Soto, this little young man with a fire in his heart, began to visit them on a weekly basis, going back over and over and over again. And even during the pandemic, go out there and visit this group of people. Finally got about 25 to 30. He called me one day and said, Pastor Rich, we need to build a church. I said, well, let me see what I can do. I started contacting some of our pastors, some of our friends that we know. And the Lord enabled us to raise funds. They just finished building their church building about a month ago. Beautiful, beautiful building. This is pictures of the very first water baptism ever among the Machigenga. But you see, that group of 25, God spoke to their hearts. And one day, Santiago was talking to him, and they said, hey, Pastor Santiago, you know, there's another group of us about 2 hours walk through the jungle. Would you be willing to go with us and help us share the gospel with them? He said, sure. So they walked out the 2 hours. And Santiago helped them share the gospel. And now they have planted a church. And guess what they're starting to do now? Baptize people. And they needed about $15,000 to build a church. You see, the unreached peoples of Peru are so needy. One of the churches I was working with in the city of Satipo, it's one of our churches that's been around for about 70 years. Their church was made of mud brick. I don't know if you know much about mud brick, but after about 70 years of rain in the jungle, mud brick doesn't last very long. So we actually had to tear down their building. We are in the process of rebuilding their building. We need about $100,000 to finish rebuilding this church. And why is this church so important? Because they have a vision for reaching the lost in the jungles up and down the rivers. They have a vision to plant, get this, 50 churches in 50 communities. They've already done 20. But you see, we need to finish this church building. What do we need to finish that church building? Just $100,000. That's all we need. And they could finish their building. It will be a training center to train young people, pastors, missionaries, to go out into the jungles and reach the lost and to make disciples. BGMC in Peru. The lady in the green shirt is Kathy Wilson. Yeah, you've probably heard the name Wilson before. That's John's older sister. She is the wife of the national director of the missions organization. She oversees BGMC. Her team are made up of Sarah, Erica holding the flag of Uruguay, and then Cheryl, the young lady sitting there in the white, yellowish outfit. All of them are graduates, have been our students. I got a message yesterday from Shiloh, the picture that's up in front, and said, Pastor Rich, I'm days away from presenting my papers to become the next minister with the Assemblies of God of Peru. But you see, it's not just that. God is also calling these young people to be missionaries. And there's some of those young ladies. Shadow is the one, the second from the right, with blue and red all over her face. You probably don't recognize her that well. That was after we did one of our color events where every color had a purpose. But you see, these young people, these young ladies in this picture are called to be missionaries. Sarah, to East Africa. Jackie, the one right beside me to my left, to the Unreached Peoples Group of Peru. Erica next to her to North Africa. Cheryl, that little girl in the yellow in that previous picture, called to be a missionary to China. Viviana and her husband, also graduate from our program, are called to be missionaries to East Africa. I cannot tell you what country that is. In the other picture, again, you'll see Hating, called to be a missionary to India. Tomorrow she has her interview at the U.S. Embassy. But also sitting in that picture are Karina, called to be a missionary to Thailand, and Paul Wilson, the other Wilson. I just call him Wilson 1, 2, and 3, just to keep them straight. That's Wilson 2, called to be a missionary to China. And you see, they go and they make disciples. But you see, God is moving in incredible ways through these young people and across Peru. In the picture on the left, the young man with the blue and yellow shirt came to one of our kids' camps. His grandma sent him to that kids' camp because he was dying from tuberculosis. The doctors had given up all hope. And during that kids camp, we were praying for those that were sick, and little Hasiel came forward. We were not even aware that he had tuberculosis. If he had, we probably would not have even let him even come to the camp because it's such an infectious disease. But we laid hands on little Hasiel. We prayed for him. And God reached down and touched him and healed him. A week later, his grandma came back and said, the doctors cannot find any trace of tuberculosis in him at all. At another one of our events, one of our camps, a young man came who was dying of cancer. And again, we prayed for the sick. He went back home, and the doctors did a complete and thorough exam. Not one trace of cancer in his body anywhere. God is moving. The Spirit is moving. And when He speaks to you, you must listen. That lady, Maria Elena, the Lord will speak to her to go and lay hands on the sick. And what does she do? She obeys. While her mother was laying in the hospital dying of cancer, the Lord spoke to her and said, go up and down the aisles, the hallways, and pray for the sick. She found this one person who had a huge lump on his shoulder. She reached out her hand and began to pray for him. And he was healed just like that. Another time she was out ministering and there was a blind man there. And the Lord spoke to her, go pray for him. And she went over and laid her hands on him and God healed him. You see, the Spirit is speaking. My question is, are we listening? Do we hear what He is saying? You see, Jesus said, basically, loose translation, wherever you are, wherever you're going, make disciples. Make disciples. And how do we do that? We reach the lost. We train them. They go and put it into practice. And they make other disciples. And how do we do it? Through the power of the Holy Spirit. The Spirit, the winds of the Spirit are blowing all across Latin America. People are being baptized in the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in other tongues. We've held Holy Spirit conferences all across Peru and seen literally hundreds and thousands of people baptized in the Holy Spirit. People healed. People set free from demonic forces. And I'm going to ask you to do one thing when you leave this place. In the back, in the foyer, there are prayer cards. I'm going to ask you to go and pick one up. Take it home with you. Put it someplace where you're going to see it every day. Gentlemen, that is the refrigerator. Ladies, that is the mirror in your bathroom. See it about 1,000 times a day. Young people, I'm not letting you off the hook. You can stick it and glue it right on the back of your cell phone. Or take a picture of it and have it be your screensaver on your phone. You'll be looking at it about 18 hours a day. But when you see that card, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. To pray for us. And to pray that God will continue to pour out His Spirit across Peru and across Latin America. That the lost will be reached. That the found will be trained. That the Spirit will pour out Himself out. That people will be called into ministry. And that they will go and they will reach others. And they will train others. But as I conclude today, I want to ask you a question. Maybe you're sitting here today and you would say, but Brother Rich, Pastor Rich, I don't know Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Or maybe you did at one time, but you're not living for Him now. I want to give you an opportunity to make your life right with Christ. And if you're here today and you want to make your life right with Christ, I'm going to give you an opportunity to do it in just a minute. Lord, I come before you this morning, and I ask, Lord, that you'll speak to every heart. Lord, know our hearts. And Lord, if there's even one here today who doesn't know you as Lord and Savior, maybe they've fallen away or maybe they've never known you, I ask, Lord, that you'll give them the courage. Holy Spirit, call them and give them the strength to respond. If you're here today with every eye closed and nobody looking around, you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and you want to make your life right with Christ, right where you're sitting, I'm going to ask you to do something very simple. I'm going to count to 3. And when I say the word 3, all I'm going to ask you to do is to look up and make eye contact with me. That's all you're going to have to do. 1, 2. If you don't know Christ as your Lord and Savior, and you want to, when I say 3, look up and make eye contact with me. 1, 2, 3. Is there anybody? Anyone? Looking to my left, your right. Looking across the congregation. Is there anyone? Anybody in the balcony? Then I will assume that everyone in this place is a born-again Christian. And what are you called to do? You are called to reach the lost. We are called to go and make disciples. Wherever we are, wherever we go. And today I've introduced you to some of my disciples. Let me ask you this question. How many disciples do you have? Do you have any? If you don't, you're not fulfilling the Great Commission. You're never too young or never too old to make a disciple. Become a spiritual brother, a spiritual mom or dad. Reach somebody for Christ. And it's so important because I said at the beginning of the service, we are in the last days and soon Christ will come back and people will lose their opportunity. And you see, someday everybody will stand before God the Father. Everybody. And there will be one young man who will stand there on Judgment Day, whose name is Donnie. Donnie was my best friend. But Donnie didn't know Jesus. When I was in junior high, Donnie went out with another friend of mine. They began to dig into a sand dune that was close to our house. And while they were digging, that sand dune collapsed on them. They got the other guy, Mike, out alive. But Donnie slipped into eternity. And someday Donnie will stand before God the Father. And God will say to my best friend Donnie, "Depart from me, you worker of iniquity. I never knew you. I don't know who you are." And you know what the worst thing is? I can just imagine in my mind what Donnie's going to say to me that day. "Rich, you are a Christian. You knew that I would be here this day. and you didn't say a thing about it. Why? Why didn't you tell me? Some of you may have family members, friends, neighbors, people you know who will ask you the same question, and what are you going to respond? I will tell you, there is no good response to that question. I want to encourage you to reach the lost. Our time on this planet is short. You don't think everything that's happening in the world today is not getting ready for the mark of the beast? Oh, yeah, it is. It's not going to be very long till you have to show your little vaccination passport just to get on an airplane. Just ask Qantas Airlines. They are already requiring it. It's not a far step from that. Show me your passport to get into the grocery store. Oh, wait, why don't we just put a chip in your hand or your foot? Friends, time is winding down. It will not be long till we hear that trumpet sound. We are in a moment of urgency in the church. And the Spirit is speaking. Do you hear what He's saying? Can you hear Him?